This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher Podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a privilege to be with you today. We got a really cool episode in store for you. A little bit different, a little off the beaten path, but it's going to be really cool. Got a great guest on the show to talk about all the things that he's passionate about that I think you're going to take a lot of value from at the end of this show. I'm excited for this. What are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about technology and data and how to kind of leverage that and intermingle that with people, especially in like the nonprofit and philanthropic spaces, to really help give people the best experiences possible. Now, this doesn't just apply to nonprofits and philanthropy groups, so this applies to in general. But the guest that we have on today is really focused on the nonprofit sectors and how to engage people. This is about community. It's about bringing people together. This is about making a difference and doing it in ways that we've never done it before. And I don't know about you, but as a person that's prior military, person that has a broader understanding of things that are going on in the world, especially in the political and diplomatic spaces, I think we need to come together and unite and find common ground and move the country and the world down the road in a different way more than any other time in history. This is a time for action. This is a time for now for people to step up and lead and take charge and contribute and engage. You look at the political landscape that we see today, and we don't have very many choices as far as political leaders, especially President of the United States. We don't have a lot of choices. I'm not sure everybody loves everything about all of the choices that we have or don't have. And so it's about being engaged. And so hopefully today you're inspired by this to engage in your community and do something that you're able to do to make your area better. Today we have the privilege of having John Del Bello on the show. Let me tell you some really cool things about John. He's a very dynamic entrepreneur that is really doing some amazing things out there. John is the founder and CEO of a company called BGiving, which is a software technology platform for nonprofits and philanthropic organizations out there that simplifies and unifies people around a common community. He's a visionary. He is a social impact leader on a mission to empower people to make a difference in the world, whether that be small or big. He is supercharged to get people engaged, leveraging the things that he and his people have created to make things a lot easier and simpler. So, holy cow, John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was wonderful. I appreciate your kind words. And I think it's everybody has a point in time where they relate to how they want to make a difference in the world. You could be young and say, I want to volunteer. You could be middle-aged and want to raise a fundraiser. You could be old age and want to leave a legacy and put a big deposit on a cause you really care about. And I think what we've developed is that we're allowing everybody to have a curated experience in that way. So it's almost like it's a platform. Think of an Instagram meets Charles Schwab. So we're convinced that people can make impact. So we relate that to making impact investments, whether that be time, talent, or treasure. And then we make the app operate exactly like an Instagram, where the nonprofit orgs are on one side telling their stories, and the other side are their followers, right, or supporters. And so they're the ones that are choosing the orgs or causes they want to support. They're choosing how they want to get engaged. You know, some people are always posting on Instagram, right? Well, here you're not posting. You're saying, okay, I'll do quarterly for that org, or I'll do volunteer work for that org, or I'll sign up and be a fundraiser for that org, or I'll get on thetheir board. So we want to make it really simple and straightforward. So it's a social impact platform that operates like a social media platform.
That is really cool. We're going to get into some of those types of things and how that's making a difference out there in the space to connect people. But first, John, I got a simpler question for you.
Okay.
You like things simple? I got a very simple question for you. Help people understand you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So it was right after I had grown up going to all boys Catholic high school and then a Jesuit university. And both of those institutions were very much about giving back, is the best way to describe it. Participating in community, serving community members. And I got out of college and my oldest sister said, "Hey, I think you'd love this org I've been volunteering at for a couple of years now. I don't have the time anymore." She started to travel a lot for her work. And so she sort of passed the torch and said, meet some of my friends who were there. Some people were younger than her, sort of between our ages. And I ended up, volunteering one weekend. Well, I was so impressed by how they ran things and then how their impact was making a difference in these kids' lives and stuff. And I started to find out more. And I loved the people I was hanging out with who were volunteering as well. And I was like, because these are very not only good people, but like highly intelligent people giving their time. And they didn't need to do that at the age they were at, but they were really, it was phenomenal. So, and then I started to see the fundraising activity. So interestingly enough, I'm doing this volunteer work for a couple of months, and I get hired out of college I'm in the top division of the top company in the world, in the top department of the top division of the company in the world. So it's the number one Marsh McLennan, and it's their number one division, number one department. And I start to realize that there's people in my organization that are part of this organization. So they're at this foundation, at the board level, at the advisor, consultant, at the fundraisers. And I'm like, this is interesting. I'm like, I'm going to see if they would sponsor a table of my colleagues, younger people, to attend, because we're the ones that actually give the time. They're giving more of their time and talent and treasure at a different level, right? We're giving our time to actually serve the kids in this. And so I end up writing a letter because it wasn't email back then, but you had to write a letter, and it went to the president of the company. And I asked for a support of a $10,000 table, because it was the minimum was 10,000. It was 1,000 a plate. It went up from there. And these fundraisers were raising between 6 and 12 million a year, twice a year, May and June, December. Yeah. So, and the organization was founded by the Diocese of New York, the main cardinal, but it served 88 inner city schools, the worst neighborhoods, and their schools were graduating 97% of their kids to college. And then the kids who were getting it out of the system were actually coming back into the system to help either teach or do better jobs and start volunteering. And then they'd also be giving money back. That's how empowering. And it was running for about 13 years, 14 years when I joined it. So they were making a huge difference. And the other thing that fascinated me was the fundraisers were completely not just Catholic leaders in New York City. This was like every top business leader you could imagine in New York City were at these events, because they recognized this was the only outlet for kids in these poor neighborhoods. There wasn't a better direction for them to be, going. So sure enough, I get a phone call from the secretary, and she's like, "You can come up to so-and-so's office at 10 a.m. this morning." I'm like, okay. So I walk in, and first thing he says, he's like, "I'm impressed that you actually had the guts to ask, and that you're doing things like this on your own, like volunteering to this org. The org is really great organization." So he said, "I think you're absolutely right. We need to have more young people present at these things to show that there's a new engagement level, right? It's not just about the people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so he actually funded a table. We had all my colleagues that were around the same age. We're all either 1 or 2 years out of college in this organization. And and then it ended up, I got some of my colleagues to actually join the foundation, so do work. And I did meet the cardinal a couple of years after that. I'd been involved pretty heavily. And from there, it just kept snowballing. I was in another organization, again, nonprofit in New York City, helping education, actually low-income kids in bad neighborhoods. And that was a great foundation as well. And I sat on the junior board there as well. And so, it just became this thing where I just enjoyed doing this on my free time. And it seemed to I don't know, it turns you on in a way that's different than like being excited about your own thing. Like I was also racing cars on my hobby, right? At the same time I'm doing that. And somehow you got this equal balance of like a high from it, right? This feeling
Yeah.
that you're in your element. So yeah, I stayed involved in that one organization for almost 15 years in New York. And then I moved here in 2009 to Austin from New York. And I've been in maybe 12 to 15 different charitable activities here. And it was really becoming clear right around before COVID, maybe 16, 17, that you had these social platforms. And at the time, it was Facebook had just passed 2 billion users. Instagram was a blip on the screen. They hadn't been purchased by Facebook yet. LinkedIn was growing and it hadn't been purchased by MS yet. So it's just interesting time. And I kept thinking about all these struggles that the nonprofits are having, right? They're not great at things. They're not able to reach younger audiences. They're not good at just engagement in general. They're not as transparent as they need to be. They definitely over rely on either the large donor or a set of donors that are at some point kind of not be donating anymore because they're older. They could pass away or whatever. And I'm like, I don't understand why there's not this combination of like an element of the technology for the younger generations activating, the orgs to want to engage the younger generations and knowing that they need to somehow transfer this impact element to a younger generation. I mean, the world's growing. We now 54% of the world is under the age of 40. So that tells
Wow.
you something, and that's only growing in one direction. And then at the same time, because I was around these organizations, a lot of the leadership is older. They're not really replacing themselves or able to replace themselves. They're not able to get sometimes the staff they need because again, they're not funded as well. That's another whole problem, by the way. But yeah, I just recognized there was just better ways to go about bringing these two very diverse sets of people together, right? The younger generations who want to get active and want to change the world, and the nonprofits that don't seem to know how to really engage and impact and empower themselves to bring those younger generations on board.
Man, that's a great story, John. I mean, you're right. There's so many nonprofits out there, so many choices out there. How do you know which one is good or bad? Which one? How do you know which one's legit? How do you know what the cost is? I remember being in the military,
Yep.
and they had something called the Combined Federal Campaign (CFC) once a year. A lot of the HR people
Yeah.
in the military would come around, and they had these, not really books, but kind of like paper, look like newspapers. And there's a list of 4 zillion nonprofits, you can contribute to, and they'll take it out of your paycheck every other week. And you can divide it up, and, it was your way to give back. And it was great. It was awesome. There's a zillion things to choose from, but it's like, I don't know what this organization is. A couple of them, like Wounded Warrior Foundation, or,
Hmm.
Shriners, or I don't know, whatever, right? There's a million of them in there, but you don't know how big they are. You don't know where they're at. You don't know, what the needs are, and who they really serve, unless you do all this research. And it was confusing. It wasn't very smart. I didn't feel like I was making a really good educated decision on, where I was gonna donate my money. Not that people were forcing me to. You didn't have to do this. It's for
Right.
people that wanted to do it. It's completely voluntarily, but just lacked information, right? And so, what I've noticed, over the years, and I've worked and coached nonprofit organizations. I am connected to quite a few of them myself. One of them is USA Cares,
Yep.
veteran military related.
Yep.
Another one is a smaller one called Spark Hope, and they focus their efforts on supporting single parent households that are struggling, going through a tough time. And as I, got more engaged in those things, John, I realized, man, these are dysfunctional groups. Like, their boards are made up of people of all walks and shapes and sizes, from different experience levels, education levels. There's no real criteria for really vetting those people. And I remember one of the first, when I got into coaching many, many years ago, one of the first nonprofits I worked with, and I did it for free. They were struggling and they had a bunch of people on the board that were not effective, meaning they'd show up once a quarter and they'd have coffee and juice and donuts, and they would be in receive mode. Okay, tell me, how many people did we support today? How many dollars did we raise yesterday? And they were like in receive mode, but they needed to be in contribute mode, meaning going out there, leveraging their friends, family, networks
Yep.
of people. Most of these people are retired.
Yep.
So they should have a lot of extensive people in their network to bring to the table to drive donations and engagement and all the things that you're talking about. And it wasn't happening. And so we revamped some things in there, but they didn't have tools. They didn't have a lot of money for technology and things that you're talking about. So given this situation that you're recognizing, that I and probably a lot of others recognize, because if you're a leader, if you own a business or you are a leader in a company somewhere, you're a target. You get targeted for everything all the time, right?
Yep.
And usually around the holidays, people are knocking on your door, wanting you to give to some charity thing or whatever. And again, you're just overwhelmed. And which one do I give to? Which one do I don't? And where I've seen that work the best is when an organization connects with a nonprofit or philanthropic group where there's a connection there. And I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. I've got a client that owns a software company. They do really well. They're really good people. And the spouse of the CEO, in their mid 30s, mind you,
Yeah.
got cancer
Oh, wow.
and had to go through treatment and all the things you do to get over that. Luckily, they caught it early enough. They were able to get it, and she's in remission, and everything's okay.
Hmm.
But that experience shaped the leaders of that company, and the employees felt bad that people were going through this, right? And so everybody's rallying around everybody on the team, and they sponsor and are connected to cancer organizations,
Yep.
and they
Yep.
walk in the Susan Coleman, things, and they have the pink ribbons, and like they're all in. Like
Yep.
there's a connection. It means something,
Yep.
and
Totally.
they get their employees engaged. And so, what are you seeing out there, and how have you been able to disrupt that with some of the things that you bring into the table with technology and data?
Sure. Sure. Great question. So we have been really operating in the shadows for about 3 years now. First, we went and I spent roughly myself about 1,500 hours in research, and that was between 2020 2021. And then we've had 7 universities with different students doing projects for us, everything from masters and MBAs to undergrads, business schools as well, students. So they've helped us a lot tremendously. We've had probably combined with that number of students, a total of 75 people pro bono helping us. And what we've done is we've spent the time to not only investigate and research, and we've got a whole knowledge base we share on our website. So you could actually go see all the research we've done and what it uncovers and how it proves what we're doing is very meaningful. The biggest part was the Giving Tuesday study that was globally done by 300 organizations, released in 2022, and then the recent one by The Economist in January this year. And they both point to basically lack of engagement, not using technology the way it should be, and not being as transparent or letting people understand your impact, right? Sharing either metrics or some type of measurement of impact. So in our app, we'd already inherently built and designed this because we'd studied so much data before having the actual reports verify it. It's very kind of interesting. And so what we see is that we said, how do we make technology, because nonprofits are not great at technology, how do we make it simple so like a 14, 15-year-old could use it? So that was the design ethos when we did our requirements. Make it both sides super easy so younger audiences can participate and feel like it fits them, and also it's curated to their experience. But again, to that nonprofit side, we want to make it so everything is simple. Like our onboarding, literally, Jason, our onboarding takes 15 minutes because it's really not onboarding. It's not like this Microsoft or Salesforce where you're there for like months. And one of the reasons we did that is because as soon as I started doing the research, we found out the fintech existed, that we could do micro donations as one of the options, and some of the other features were quarterly recurring instead of monthly. Monthly is just not good for most people, and that's why it went up and came straight down in like a 4-year period. The other thing is we recognized data was available. IRS finally released public data in end of 2019. So we said, okay, we can grab as much data as possible. That was the first set that really interested us in informing us what an actual community organization is, because once we did that, we learned there's really just 66,000 orgs that do community work. If you're under $200,000 and not reporting on a 990, which is 300,000 or so nonprofits do, that's because they're typically not the community impact type org. They're personal, they're Jimmy's leukemia, or they just the parents died and we need to raise money for the funeral, or it's like all these types of different causes, but they're not true nonprofit impact centers. And then once you go above 2 million in revenue, you really don't need us. I mean, some could use us, but you really don't need us because you're already getting 90% of donations in a given year are orgs 2.5 million and up. So they're not having a problem, right? Getting access to money most of the time. They also don't have a problem with a base, a following, right? So we find ourselves in this 200,000, 990 filing, 2.5 million roughly top revenue point. They have very few people in their organizations. I think you recognize this from many of the orgs you've been in. They're jack of all trades. The executive director or president is doing 3 or 4 jobs, right? And the other person who's probably their program services manager, they're doing 2 or 3 jobs. They might have an admin that's voluntary. They might even have a staffer that's voluntary part-time or something, or they're paying part-time. They don't have marketing. They don't have business. They don't have a COO. They don't have a CFO or CMO either. So they're just taxed. And we get that they want to focus on their energy on their work. But to your point, if you're going to engage people and get them to connect with your cause, you still need to be able to talk to that point, right? What you're doing. So one of the things we're really excited because we're going to release our new version to the public finally in September, which is the mobile app for participants. And the nonprofit side is going to get an improvement, which is a SaaS product. And they're going to be able to actually have an AI tool, scrape everything we have because we have all their 990 data, and it's already in the app. So in other words, when you go on the user side, the mobile side, you go on there, we know, you're going to tell us what your zip code is. You're going to know where you live, what community orgs are, what they're doing, what causes, what categories they're in. And then we share 990 data, when they were founded, what their 990s report, expenses, revenue, grants. So we're very clear and transparent about that information because now it's made public and we can do that. And then the other thing we do is we allow people to go investigate, find out. So we give them their socials, we give them their website link. So if they want to do a little bit more digging, because otherwise we just share their impact statement, which is their mission statement on their 990. And then what we're going to be doing now is, it's really exciting. We're building this AI bot, and it will literally scrape the data set. So it'll scrape all their 990 data, their socials, their website, and we'll be able to take still images or create videos, create the script, and tell their impact story for them. So it can either be in a format of visual, just looking at the still image, or a video telling the story. But it'll let them, we're still going to give them elements that they can control, but it will actually do the work for them. And then we'll have that go to the other side. So now when you're on the other side and you go, oh man, I want to find out about this mental health work, you'll either be able to see a script sharing what their impact is, or a video talking about what their impact is. And to your point, when you had that list, you didn't have anything like this. No data, no understanding, no context, right? So this makes it super simple for anybody on the other side to be like, okay, I live in Miami, I live in Atlanta, I live in Phoenix, what orgs could I support? Well, here's the categories, here's the subcategories, which is the actual causes themselves. And it really makes it so much simpler for people to find what they want to make a difference in their community. But to your point, there are a good number of people that are typically engaged initially because of a personal consequence, right? Either they've known someone who died of cancer, they know someone who had mental health problems, they know somebody who's got autism, or they're a veteran, right? So that pretty much gets most people active, right, to do something philanthropic or social impact minded. Our app is really to just make it more social. And so anybody, what we found really the most important thing was to viralize the nature for both sides and give data and insights to both sides. So to your point, how do you make people feel like they're connected and empowered on both sides, that they feel like they're making a difference? Well, the one way we do it for nonprofits is they get on our app. All they're doing is vetting the information we already have and telling us their lives they impact on an annual basis. It's the only new data we ask them, because that is a transparency product for the other side. And then we give them all the data on every single nonprofit in the database. So if you're in Miami and you're doing mental health and you want to work with another mental health org that's in, Chicago, you can filter and see it and then contact them. You can directly contact. We have a collaborate folder. Really simple. That's another efficiency we're trying to get. If you're a 250,000 size org and you want to grow to 400,000, well, how do you do that? Like we were talking earlier, you got to be your best. Well, you got to learn how the best do it. How did that other org get to 600,000? Call them up, talk to their board, find out what strategic, things they did. So these are the ways we're trying to empower that side. But again, by telling stories, announcing fundraisers, and announcing when you have volunteer opportunities, that's just transparent and makes it easy for the other side to then act. And so one of the key elements is that we give both shareable links. So a nonprofit could give the shareable link of their org to all their donor base and then track what their donor base is doing with it. Are you sharing it? Are you getting people to our fundraiser? Are you getting people to the volunteer opportunities? Are you engaging more, right? And then the same thing for the users. Like if you got on it, you'd be able to basically say, hey, my 20 buddies, right? I'm going to send it out to my 20 buddies, my link. If they go on the link and they sign up, you now see what they do in impact. So we share your impact to you and your broader impact, which to me, it's the most viral nature of something that can make you feel really good, because you see what your other people are doing on just because you got them on the platform. So in essence, it's better than a birthday fundraiser on Facebook by far. And we track so many data points that you'll actually see, like number of charities, donations, volunteer activities, just a lot of things, lives impacted. And so, yeah. And a lot of this data will grow and will create more metrics. One of the things we want to do, to your point, is have them be much more transparent about. I think one of the biggest struggles I see that we could solve in the long term is, if you're not doing well, you need to be mindful to share that as clearly as possible so you get the support you need. I'll give you a perfect example. Kids in school, and he might be an A student in 8 out of his 10 classes. And those 2 classes, either he doesn't like the teacher, he's not doing well, or the other subject, it could be something like chemistry. He just doesn't get it, right? Well, the first thing you want to do as a parent, if you're talking to your kid, you go, let's get a tutor. Let's figure out how we can help you support with the chemistry. So you maybe someone can help you learn it better, have you more comfortable with the subject matter, whatever, to get you improved. Maybe we'll get you from a C to a B plus, right? Or B to an A, but whatever, you take those steps. And what I find critically upsetting and sad in the industry is that people want to hide when they don't perform or show impact, instead of come out and be honest and say, we failed, we need help, we need support, we need to replace people on our board, or we need better staff, or whatever it may be. You have to be transparent about that and call on, we all learn much more from failure than success. So we need to get them to be more transparent about why, if you had this as the impact goal, why didn't you hit it? So how can we aim to retarget and get to that point? And again, that's why these tools on the nonprofit side are to engage and collaborate with others. So here's another fascinating way to use the platform in that instance. So imagine, you just lost your executive director. And by the way, anybody in the org can have access to the app. So if the board had access, or the service provider, service manager, they all have access. So let's say you lose your executive director suddenly, and you need to find one. Well, you could use the filter to go find all the other orgs doing the same work and go see, hey, do you have, a network, or could you help us short term? We have these, it's just so many different ways. They could go market together. You could live during mental health month, you could have all these mental health orgs on the app, and there's thousands. That's the second highest area besides humanitarian. They could go and actually create a video, impact video together, have it broadcast into their unique communities, and they've just saved a ton of marketing dollars, right? There's just so many ways they could use the tools and collaborate. It's pretty powerful.
That is powerful, John. Very thoughtful too, man. There's a lot of thought and effort put into this. I could tell you and your colleagues have really gone deep into this and the science of this and the psychology of this. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a heavy hitter, kind of a thing, because things that I've noticed that people will give money, traditionally speaking, and they'll write a check or they'll give a donation once a month or whatever, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? It's kind of like, yeah, I gave money to the Cancer Society, I gave money to the local shelter, to take care of pets or whatever that may be. All good and well. They all need money, but that doesn't mean engagement. It doesn't mean like they're spending that money wisely. It doesn't mean they're saving an animal or doing all of the things they could be doing to the best of their ability to make, more of a positive impact. And so one thing that I like about this is that the engagement, right? I and others like to see good news stories. I want to see my money and my time and my effort and whatever I'm contributing to actually be paying off, to actually be making a difference. So the engagement around this, the social media kind of dynamic that you've built into this is really powerful, because you're seeing people post things, you're seeing people ask for help, you're collaborating, you are engaged, you are in, like you're buckled in, you're on the bus with everybody on this journey, seeing things, good or maybe not so good that's happening. And so you can continue, hey, we missed our mark on fundraising at Christmas. We're looking for volunteers to ring a bell or to, deliver presents to needy families or whatever. And you're like, I've got an extra 10 minutes. I can do that in my neighborhood or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Right. And you know what I'm saying? There
Yeah. Yeah.
it's much more powerful because now you're pulled into that world
That's right.
and seeing things from the perspective of the providers and the people in need and all of those things, versus being on the outside kind of looking in the window like, yeah, they have some things on their shelves. I'm assuming they took my $3 million I donated yesterday and they're doing like you eliminate that.
So funny. We recently, as we were sharing this knowledge base and creating it for people could access, um, one of the things I wanted to do was actually share all the neuroscience behind what we're doing. So we actually went and found all these studies about giving and generosity and kindness and what happens. And these are like deep, by the way, deep studies.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me because our app will actually have a beneficial physical, mental outcome on you from being on it, no matter whether you're the nonprofit or the other side, because the things it's doing and engaging you, it literally releases certain hormones in your brain, puts your brain and heart in coherence. Your physical body has actual positive reactions. So which shifts things in your, like your stress levels. All these things are affected deeply and in a very positive way. So that's the sheer outcome, like the neuroscience behind actually how the app would operate in people's lives versus the dilemma we see with the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and the TikToks, where it's
Right.
like, teenage suicide and mental health issues and struggling with loneliness and like just you can name a ton. I mean, there's stats out there that say something like 1 million people have died due to social platforms in existence because again they've created divisiveness in communities. They create all sorts of
Yeah.
problems, bullying. So
And you just get overwhelmed by all the stuff that you
totally,
don't know if it's fake, you don't know if it's real, you
totally,
don't know if it's a
totally.
scam, you
Yep,
don't know.
yep,
I mean, it's just this
yeah,
unvetted,
yeah.
untrusted kind of space to be, out there with everybody under God's green earth on some of these social platforms. I mean, they're all great. I mean, nothing against the social platforms, but people use them in a lot of different ways. And you just don't know with social engineering and things like what's legit anymore. People are just scared to death.
So if you think about it this way, the there's only two houses, right, that run the card game, and it's basically Meta and TikTok, and they know they're both very aware that ads and paid sponsored activity is their revenue model. So
Yep.
they have to keep you on the app as long as possible. And one of the things we found out when we were designing was we wanted it to be you get on when you get on and you get off when you want to get off, because it's just when you want to use it and
It's not
activate.
addictive. It's not,
Correct.
yeah.
It's not addictive at all. And then the other fascinating thing you were saying before, which made me think another point I wanted to share, which was the transparency factor is so important because so I've had two different major experiences with huge fraud. So one was 9/11. So I'm a 9/11 survivor right across the street, lost my apartment, lost my job, got ashed on and got
Wow.
evacuated that day. And it was like 2004, 2005, it comes out $3 billion in fraud occurred due to 9/11, right? All these fake
Yeah.
works. Because the IRS basically was just approving documentation or delaying it and just saying, go ahead, act as a
Right.
553. And then what was worse was they'd already electrified everything by COVID, because we went through that process when I first formed our nonprofit arm before we
Yep.
formed the for-profit arm.
COVID brought the same kind of things, people scamming PPP loans and all kind of stuff.
So one of the things we looked at was that not only are we going to use the IRS data set to prove and validate the orgs, because they're 200 to 2 million is they're having to file 990s, but
Yep.
we're showing 3 years minimum. So they have to have 3-year operational minimum in the 990 set. Otherwise, you can't be on our app. And that's another way to validate, is that you can't just be the first year or, uh, and that's important. And I think at some point, we all know like the famous ice bucket from Alzheimer's. They raised $100 million and then didn't know what to do with raising $100 million because they weren't prepared to raise $100 million. And I don't think it's not a great thing to happen, but we want to be the opposite. We want to be able to organically grow support at the community level, to your point earlier, grow community engagement, so they solve the problems of the community together through the app's ability to connect those individuals, right? The orgs or
Yeah. That's
people.
amazing.
And that's more important because if you think about it, yes, I might be here in Austin and want to support my old org in New York City. I can do that. I know the org, I was involved in it, right? That's a different thing. But
Yep.
when you're in your community and let's say you're under the age of 45, like your friends who suffered cancer, unfortunately, like you have a whole new perspective on like, how can I make a difference in my own community? So if we tell you these are the 30 orgs in your community, pick out the ones you want to help. The interesting thing to me, which the stat proved over and over, we kept finding this in research, is that your average active participant supports 4 to 6 orgs in a given year, not just one. So that's why we thought that tracker was so important. We call it ROI, return on impact tracker. We thought that was really important to give that visual so you could see how much you've given to which orgs and how much. And
Yeah.
that's important for people to understand. But on top of that, it was like that's our sort of that research tells us that nonprofits have to stop thinking they're in this competitive landscape, right? There's enough people that if you engage them properly, they will support you. You're just not engaging them properly or getting to the audience group that could be active. And that's the other part. We're at a 40% participation rate, down from 70%. And that's
Mm.
basically because, number one, as we know, there's a wealth gap that's gotten worse and worse over the years. That's why we wanted to make it the most affordable platform, by the way, for people. So even if you just wanted to give $26 a year, let's say you picked 4 orgs and you gave once a quarter, you could pick 4 different orgs and give $5 or $8. I mean, we're not about, you have to give $100 to be on our app. That's not what we're about. And if you want to give 5,000, you could. I mean, we give you an open amount if you did want to do that. But it was so important because when we tested the mobile app in the marketplace, we had students from business school test it, literally cold. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew who we were. And we just said, just tell us, would you use this app to participate in community impact? And we had 95% of those not active want to use the app, which was very telling to us.
Wow.
And 85% who were in philanthropy active wanted to use it as well. The difference in that 15% of those already active was that they were burned, to your point. They were burned by other orgs and they're not trusting of someone they don't know. So even though we're not an org, we're not a nonprofit, we're a platform for them to find the nonprofit they want to help. They said they'd still want to have a trust factor built, maybe give it a year to see what others, whatever. But that had nothing to do with us. It had to do with them being burned prior in the sector.
it's so impressive with all the data and the research that you guys have put into this, because you brought up a good point. The people that run nonprofits are busy. They wear 14 different hats on any given day. They're the leader, they're the chairman of the board, they're the, business development person going out getting donations, they're the marketing person. Like any given day, you can be wearing a lot of different hats, and that can be detrimental, right? Like to survive, even though it's a nonprofit, you don't get to keep the profits. All of the money that comes into the organization is going towards the people or whatever the cause is that's the
Hmm.
need, right? They still need to be run like a business. You still need to have leadership. You still need to have, the right kind of cash flow coming in to support the business. You still need to do marketing and sales and build relationships and manage the board, and there's all these functional things still need to run just like any other kind of business. And what I find, and I think we were talking earlier, John, is that a lot of these leaders that are nonprofits, a lot of them are in there because they're really good hearted people that have gone through some things themselves, and they want to make a difference, they want to lead, they're passionate, right? They're kind, caring, loving people, and that's all great, but sometimes they lack leadership skills. Sometimes they lack the ability to make decisive decisions when they need to make hard
Hmm.
decisions. And sometimes they lack marketing and sales expertise to go out there. Somebody that used to work at a church or another organization, and they've got an opportunity to be the executive director of some nonprofit in their town, doesn't mean they're an expert on all these things. So one of the things I love about your program is that it makes things easier for the people that work in the nonprofit. It takes work off their plate. It saves them time and some energy so they can focus that on probably one of the most important things, which is, going out there, getting people engaged, getting people to donate and give and to get involved
Yep.
and to maintain that relationship. A lot of nonprofits will go out there and they'll have dinners or lunches or coffees or what functions to raise money, and then they'll get money, and then it'll kind of go cold. Like they're not good at
Yeah.
maintaining and growing those relationships into something bigger and more robust. Your platform seems to be really, really good at kind of helping them with those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I'm glad you brought this up. It's so funny. One of the things we found to be really, if I'm being straightforward, we're like, why can't we be a platform that's truly a partner, like serving them? Like
Yeah.
again, we're not trying to make a lot of money from nonprofits. We charge a 1% off the top. So if you're giving $100 through the platform, we make a dollar.
Right.
This is the way we're operating. We want to be efficient to their needs, not ours. We know we can operate really efficiently. To your point, it's like we looked at it and said, okay, the first roadmap is we need to have them really engage, right? Tell their story better. So we're giving them a tool to tell their story better so they can get engagement, right? Well, the next roadmap item, I'm glad you brought this up. The next roadmap item is to actually have an AI tool that helps them with best practices. So it will literally go through the database for them and say, your org is doing exactly the same as this org, and this org is at $1 million and you're at 250. You should reach them. Find out what they're doing.
Yep.
How did they get to $1 million?
Connect the
Or
dots. Yep.
correct. Or it could be these are the ones that have successful social media programs, right? So again, it might not be that it's about they have that extra staff person. They just know how to do it better. So we will be definitely incorporating some new AI tools serving the nonprofits to actually, to your point, become better, more efficient, effective organizations in general, right? Because is if we're capable of doing both of those two things, telling real impact stories and being transparent, and then helping them become more effective, the other side, it's so much more easy for them to now see, wow, this is what's happening in my community, and I want to help these orgs, right? Because they're doing phenomenal work and they're really clearly growing and expanding, whatever they're doing. It almost naturally becomes something really positive, and organic, because then people are just, like I said, people that are on the participating side are seeing this. They're seeing the stories being shared. They're seeing the impact being delivered. They're seeing these orgs become like, if you were to look at the app and you could see their 990 statements of financials, and they went from 300,000 to 600,000 in 3 years, you'd be like, holy crap, what are they doing, right? But here's another fascinating thing we saw that was a powerful, again, simple thing that you could do on our app. So you were talking about your friend with the cancer org. So imagine it's a small org. They need as much money as they can, and they're trying to get expanding and stuff. And let's say they can only afford one event a year, right? And most events are like 100 to 200 people, as you know. Community events, these are not 1,000 people events like the one in New York City. It's just not. Well, you also have somewhere between 200 and 500 people in your base, your donor base. So either they've given to you once, twice, or they're one of your large donors. But the key is our platform makes it simple. So imagine this. So let's just say XYZ. XYZ org has a fundraiser they want to do in September, and they want to raise $150,000. So imagine they have all their donors on our app, right? So they're tracking that because we give them insights. Right? They can see, did they share this link? Did they share the story we just told? Did they share the impact video? Did they participate in a fundraiser? They see when funds come in, how many shares, how many times it got viewed. So imagine they share this link to a fundraiser. At the fundraiser, let's say it's a 100-person fundraiser. At the fundraiser, they record the top statement by the speaker. Let's say the speaker spoke for 15 minutes. They take that 3 minutes of the top information the person was trying to convey to the crowd. They then share that on their link, right? Because they can share the link through the media, and they activate the fundraiser through all the donors that couldn't actually participate at the event. So you have 500 people in your system, 100 were at the event. The other 400 are now activated. They have the shareable link, and they can get other people to donate. So now your fundraising potential is limitless, because imagine doing that, and that's not even including people naturally on the app that are maybe not in your org, but are hearing about a fundraiser, and it's a cause they care about. They just didn't know about your org. So all of a sudden it becomes
internal crowdsourcing, inside your networks and relationships. I mean, it's
literally,
brilliant.
and you don't need to go to the event to have that support mechanism.
Right.
So,
Right.
and it took 3 clicks. They basically took the top statements from the video, they edited to our app, which is like, boom, upload, and they just share it. I mean, this is
Yeah,
super simple
that's cool.
technology to make it work more effectively, efficient for these orgs that don't have the capacity.
That is amazing, John, man. Great work. This
Thank
is
you.
amazing breakthrough, leading edge kind of stuff, out of the box thinking, being innovative and creative with, the tools and the resources that are at our disposal today in the world that we live in the 21st century, and really maximizing that and helping people in different ways be more successful in life. So, man, hats off to you for
Thank you.
really all the hard work and efforts you put into this. I know people are going to be interested and excited about this as they hear, this show, and we, broadcast this out over our channels. But John, if people want to learn more, they want to connect on this app, they want to get engaged, they want to do the things that you talked about here today. How do they connect with you? How do they get on the app and go?
We have a link, is the letter B and the word giving. It's all one word. So BGiving. And it's .1. And the one is because we chose to be one humanity, one consciousness, one planet. And then it's / Soar Higher. And they'll have 3 opportunities there. They can visit our website, and they could then find any of the research we have. They could join. We're probably going to have a wait list because the app will be released in September after Apple and Google approve it. And then they can also join the beta program, because we're trying to iterate the next version. We want to start working on that. That takes a couple months, as we have a roadmap, but we like to always include and engage the broader audiences. So nonprofit orgs can join that at the community level. Individuals can join that. And then the last one is they're going to have an opportunity to join the crowdfunding. And if they do that, they automatically get put into the beta as well, if they'd like to be. So, and the crowdfunding is because we find we do not want to try to get only people interested in making huge returns on our company. That's not what we're about. I want to express this is really important for people to understand. We're a for-profit business, but our business model is we only cover our operating cost. So everything OpEx is covered, and anything above that goes into reserve. And then we redeploy that for social impact back into communities from where it came from. And I'll give you an example so people are clear on that. imagine we're in 50 cities and we made, like say we made $20 million that's in the reserve. So the 20 gets split by the 50 depending on what came from those cities. So like say it might have been 2 million from New York City, 1 million from Phoenix, 500,000 from Atlanta, whatever that may be. We then work with those communities to redeploy that into impact. So it could be the New York City tells us we'd love to have like more mental health counseling in high schools because that seems to be the area that really needs it. It could be that they have schools like the inner city schools, they don't have electronic devices for kids, right? They don't have school iPads to understand how to grow technology. In Chicago, it could be something like building a homeless shelter. I mean, literally, like we're open to whatever way we can redeploy the capital back into impact. So that's another business model that doesn't necessarily attract investment. Unfortunately, we found this the hard way. Most people just want huge returns because they know this is going to be massive. Everybody recognizes the potential, but we want people that are more in it for their heart and the good of what we can do in the world. So yeah, so the crowdfunding is really for people that want to see this grow and expand and not have to rely on investment.
Awesome, man. That is so cool. John, we're going to put all of your contact information in the show notes of the podcast here,
Appreciate it.
so people can go right to it, click on it, and connect with you as easily as possible. And just thank you for all the things you do, man. You're doing some really cool stuff in very innovative ways, like I said before. So, folks, be giving. Be given. The letter B in the word giving. Be giving is the name of John's organization and his platform. It's amazing. Highly recommend you check it out and see how this may be able to help you. At the end of the day, we all need resources and people and things around us to be successful. Nobody is successful with being by themselves. It takes a village, it takes a community of caring, loving, whatever people that can come together for these common causes. And this is a great, great example of leveraging technology and research and data to give people an experience. Now, we've been talking about this in a nonprofit philanthropic manner today, but think about if you're a for-profit business, a small business, a big business, a church, whatever, nonprofit. The principles that we've talked about today still hold true. How do you get people engaged? How do you get people connected? How do you save time and money and frustration and confusion? How do you build trust? How do you do all of these things to move everybody together in a forward positive direction and make a positive impact? Which is, I think everybody wants to be known for making some kind of positive impact in the world on some level. This is, one of many ways you can do that. And so, John, thank you for being on the show. Folks, please reach out to John. He's an incredible guy doing some amazing things. Next week, to kind of piggyback on top of this show, next week we've got another great show. We're going to be talking about filmmaking and media to tell your story, just like John's using his technology to tell the stories of the nonprofits and the philanthropy organizations out there doing really good things in the world. We're going to be talking to some other people in different ways that are telling stories to connect to a broader audience, to bring about positive change, and to elevate things in the ways that you define as success for you. So you won't want to miss that. It's going to be a great show. Have a great week, everybody.